Hi, and welcome to Test Taking Strategies with Dr. Wellman. As we move toward standardized testing season, I know many of you are curious about test taking strategies that you can use with your student. Tonight, I offer you 4 different strategies that are all pretty effective. Now, there's many strategies in the world that you can look at for test taking. These are just 4 that are easy to learn and easy to teach. If you like them, I invite you to try them, and if they're not for you, then leave them behind. Before we begin, I do want to say our school, our teachers, our students are not their standardized test scores. While these tests do provide some data on student achievement and student growth, we have a more complete story at the school level and we understand who our students are, who our teachers are, and that one day and one moment can't define them. So that's my little disclaimer. So let's get started on these test taking strategies. I believe that we have to play the game to beat the game to change the game. And the thing about standardized tests is that they are winnable. And so here are the strategies that can help you win that game. Strategy number 1 is called Scratch That. And that's when we use scratch paper for all tests. I'm going to show you how to do all of these strategies in depth in a second. This is just an overview. Strategy number 2 is I know the answer. And that's when we answer the question before we read the answer choices. Strategy number 3, word up. That's when you use the words you know to inform your answer. Strategy 4 is called do it and ditch it. This is when you do as much as you can, eliminate as much as you can, choose an answer, and move on. So, our first strategy is scratch that, and that's when we use scratch paper for all tests. I have students fold their paper, and you may want to try it just so you can practice. Hot dog, then hamburger, then hamburger. Students then number each of the boxes 1 through 16 and write however many letter option choices there are for the test in the boxes. So that may be like A, B, C, D or A, B, C, D, E. For those of you who are like me and just can't visualize that in your brain, here's what your scratch paper would look like. So here's the front, and then on the back, there would be 8 more questions. In the slots, I invite students to scratch out when they can eliminate an answer choice to scratch out that letter so they know that they're not picking that answer. If it's a math test and some science questions, they may do those problems inside of the box associated with the question. If it's ELA, social studies, and some science questions, they may write their predictive answer in the box to help them get to the correct answer choice. I also have students use scratch paper on all tests always. We need a place to work and use our mind, and this really helps set them up for doing those things. Now, here is the best strategy ever. It's called Know the Answer. This test strategy works on all types of tests. It is fantastic. 10 out of 10. If you don't learn any other strategy, this is the one. So the way it works is students are going to read the question, but first they're going to cover the answer choices with their hand or with a piece of paper so that they're not reading the answer choices, they're just reading the question. And then after they read the question in their scratch paper, they're going to write what they think the right answer is, like what's the correct answer. And then they're going to pick the answer choice closest to what they had written in their scratch paper. So let's say the question is Dr. Wellman's favorite thing to do in the car is. Those of you who know me, those of you who have been induction with me, you could make a guess what you think I like to do in the car. So let's say we write, Dr. Wellman likes to listen to her playlist. And if you've been in my induction, you know I have a playlist for everything. And the answer choices are A, sing at the top of her lungs, B, eat meat, C, talk on the phone, or D, look like a sass machine. And the first thing we're going to do is say, oh my gosh, I immediately recognize an answer choice that it can't be. So we're going to mark off B because you know I don't eat meat. Now we're left with 3 answer choices, and our prediction was listen to a playlist. So the 2 answer choices close to that are sing at the top of her lungs and looks like a sax machine. So I would also scratch out C, and now I have to choose between A and D, and I would choose A, which is the correct answer. Okay, so then we're going to move on to our next strategy. This one is a little bit of a tongue twister, so I'm going to try. It's called word up. And this is if there is a word you don't know the definition to it in the answer choices, what do? This trips kids up so much because they'll see a word that they don't know the definition to and they'll want to choose that answer. Because what if that's the right answer? And two, that must be the answer because it's like the smartiest answer because I don't know the definition. But that's not true. A lot of times there's just stuff thrown in there. So the first thing we're going to ask students to do is use their context clues to see if they can figure out what the word means, right? Like, can you figure out what that means inside the sentence or inside of the answer choice? If that's not an option, then what we're going to invite them to do is if the words you know are right, pick the word you know. So if you know the definition to a word and that definition and that word is a correct answer choice, do not select the word you don't know. You're just going to have to let that go and look it up later. Pick the word you know. However, if the words you know aren't right, pick the word you don't know. So that means if you can eliminate the words that you know and all you're left with, or you're left with a pretty good guess that it's this word that you don't know, then pick it. So if the words you know are right, pick the words you know. If the words you know aren't right, pick the words you don't know. So what that looks like is PSAS is known for what? Schadenfreude, driving test administration, it's green and orange colors, or leading the way in education. So let's just pretend that you don't know what A is. If you really don't know, that's okay. And if you do know, just pretend. So we're going to go through and just see what we can eliminate. So number one, I know it's not B because PSAS doesn't give driving test administration. Number two, I know it's not C because the colors of PSAS are like teal and some purples are thrown in there. They're like all colors like that, but there's no green and there's no orange. So now I'm left with answer choice A and answer choice D. Leading the way in education. I know it's possible for PSAS to lead the way in education. PSAS is a school and it is associated with education. And I don't know what Schadenfreude means. So I'm going to pick D, which is leading the way in education. Our next strategy is called do it and ditch it. And so this is when you do as much of the problem as you can, predict and estimate the answer in math, pre-answer the question in English, eliminate as much as you can, use your scratch paper, and pick the best answer choice that you can get to and move on. So if we're looking at a question on expressions, so which expression is the equivalent to 4 to the 5th power times 4 to the negative 3rd? So we're going to look at that, and you may not know how to answer that, and that's okay. So we're going to test some things. So we can see that all the answers are 4. So all we have to work with is the exponents. So I'm like, okay, if we times 5 times 3, that's 15. Well, none of the answer choices are 15, so I know that can't be right. And if we did 5 divided by 3, that still is none of those answer choices. So that also couldn't be right because I know that would be a decimal because it's not even, right? Or a fraction. So it can't be multiplying or dividing. So it has to be adding or subtracting. So if we add 5 plus negative 3, even if I don't know how that works, right? I might say, I think it could be 5 minus 3. That would be 2. I think it could be 5 plus 3. That would be 8. So I could see how we could get to all of these, huh? I think the ones that don't make them any sense are the ones that end up negative. For me, it's really the ones that end up as 8 because there's no way that ends up as addition, right? There's no way that we get there. So I would eliminate answer choice A and I would eliminate answer choice D. And now I'm left with 4 to the power of 2 or 4 to the power of negative 2. I know what the misconception is as a teacher, but as a student, I would just say, pick one of those, which seems the most likely. And so then you would maybe get to the right answer. And if you were curious, it is B. So this is a process of elimination. What this ditch it and do it strategy is, you may not get to the right answer. But what we're trying to do is get you as close as possible. Because if you don't eliminate any answer choices, you have a 1 in 4 chance of getting it right. But if you can eliminate one, now you're 1 in 3. And if you can eliminate 2 answer choices, now you got a 50-50 chance. And that's always better than a 0% chance. Remember, we're playing the game to beat the game. So, those were your quick strategies for today. So, may the odds be ever in your favor. And if you have questions about test taking strategies, please reach out to me.